This program was made possible in part by a grant from Florida Public Broadcasting Service, Incorporated.
It's no longer a bar, it's history. My bar is history, that's all it is.
The bar is Captain Tony's Saloon. The town is Key West, and the owner is a living legend. Hello and welcome to Southern Circuit. I'm Rickley Stone. This week, Southern Circuit journeys to the southernmost city in the United States to meet the man who some people describe as a dropout from a Hemingway novel. On the Gulf Coast in Pensacola, we'll meet the owner of another historic Florida bar, Trader John's, whose tavern has a worldwide military following, especially among aviators. Aviation is the lifelong love of Tarpon Springs Ed Hoffman, and recreating historical aircraft is his life's work. Ocala's Judith Kaplan's work is supplying souvenirs to NASA bases and museum gift shops worldwide. We'll meet the energetic president of this million-dollar business when we travel on this week's Southern Circuit journey. Stay with us.
I didn't fall in love with Key West because of the ocean and the trees and the oranges. I fell in love with Key West because of the people. Can you imagine 35 years ago, everybody was a character. Everybody was a character.
Of all the characters living in Key West today, Captain Tony is perhaps the most legendary. He arrived in the southernmost city aboard a shrimp boat in 1948, became a charter boat captain, treasure hunter, and gun runner. He's dabbled in Caribbean Revolution, sought political office, and finally, 20 years ago, took over the original Sloppy Joe's Tavern and opened Captain Tony's Saloon, a favorite hangout of such literary giants as Ernest Hemingway and Tennessee Williams.
You must remember, I had never heard of Key West. I didn't even know it existed. I'm going back to 1948. It was a little island set apart. The natives here, I think they voted, but it wasn't important. It wasn't that important. And I found my utopia. I found heaven on earth, really, and it's, even to this day, after 35 years, I feel the same way. It's just got so much. It's the greatest city in the world to me, or a little town or island or whatever you want to call it, because we have the cream of the crop in a mental sense. The writers, the artists, just the ordinary shrimpers, the people who want to find their own way in life. And then you have the culture. To me, the true culture in Key West, the real, true, natural culture, is right on Mallory Square, every night at sunset. These are the true artists. Whether they're juggling oranges or selling cookies, to me, this is the real culture. Then we also have the other culture, like on the other side, the artists and the garden club, the better will. I love these people. I know these people. But up until this point, all these cultures respected each other. Now, we're coming into the first crucial change to me in Key West. They want to take Mallory Square away. This is the upper culture. They don't feel it belongs in Key West anymore. Not realizing this is what made Key West. The kids on a bicycle made Key West. The homosexuals made Key West. So as I'm getting into my twilight years, I hope that these changes don't happen.
I love you, Captain Tony.
All this is sex, too. Most of my success was based on the women in my life. I had 10 great affairs in my life, 10 great, beautiful women, of which 7 of them gave me 12 beautiful children. So I was always working for a woman. I mean, that's what it was all about. I always had that drive, whether it was physical, sexual, mental. It was always combinations. If someone says to me, "Who are you?" I'm me. "Well, how did you get where you're at?" I says, "It was the women in my life. It was the 10 women in my life that made Captain Tony as far as Key West goes here." I sort of became a a legend in his time, and a man who's lived what Hemingway wrote, a dropout from a Hemingway novel. All these people are writing about me, and I did some big TV shows, and I arrived, but I still don't relate to it. I did a TV show once, and the person kept bringing up what a big man I am. And I'm not a big man. He said, "What do you base your success on?" I says, I never felt I was successful. It's, well, you're here, you're on TV, you're New York Times, your story in the LA Times got the National Award from the Associated Press, the best story of the year in 1983. And I didn't know what to say. I said, well, I think if you have a tremendous sex drive and a great ego, I don't think brains means a. And it's just the way I live by that. A lot of people laugh when I say that, but you analyze it. It's very simple. I'm 67. The only regret I have in life that I wasn't born 67. I had to go all through this trouble to get here. You know, it's like sitting, I know, sure, you know, the old barber chairs. You sort of crank it when the guy's too short and they bring him up a little higher, and the barber, and he brings it a little higher. Every day, I hit the handle once, I get a little higher, and I look, and I can't believe it. I've developed I think it's the word compassion. I love people. My success is because I did love people. There's a time in your life where you're going to have to put it together. I met Shel Silverstein, a very, very dear friend of mine, and he says, Tony, you have a story, and books are forever, Tony, they're forever. Why don't you do a book about your life? So this has been I think my last project. All my life I've been climbing mountains. Every time I climbed a mountain, I got to the top and I said, man, there's no mountains after this. And then I wound up with Mount Everest. I said, there's no one after this. And I went to India, and I just kept climbing mountains. I think this is my last mountain. I don't mean that in the past tense. I can't think of anything after this. I did movies of my life. I've done everything. But Shel said books are forever. And I'm just completing my life story in a book. It's chapters. It's little things that from my youth when I was an altar boy to today. And I talk about, I think this is where, it's a confession. This is where I pour it out.
Captain Tony considers himself the last of the old-timers. When he dies, he says that will be the end of an era. Until that time, the Saloon at 428 Green Street and the man who runs it will continue to epitomize the spirit that is Key West.
We come in here to be with Trader and enjoy his wisdom and his spirit, because he is Naval Aviation, honestly.
Trader John's is more than just another Pensacola bar. It's a tradition. For almost 40 years, trainees at the Naval Air Station, top brass admirals, captains, secretaries of the Navy, and the best fighter pilots in the world have come to Trader's for a bourbon, a brew, and a breather with the Trader himself, Martin Weissman.
Oh, I was nicknamed Trader by a few naval officers that come in with school pennants. And for me to get a school pennant, I had to trade them something that they wanted in Traders. And from then on, it was Trader John's in 1940. It was the year of the year that we started Trader John's.
For many, Trader John's is more a museum than a bar. The walls of this one-time warehouse tell a story of aviation history. Military men stashed their most beloved trophies here, from priceless squadron photographs to airplane instrument panels. And every day, Trader rearranges his gallery to accommodate the newest mementos.
We do a lot of business with the Navy, and these kids really like Trader John's, and they always want to leave a token. Before they left Pensacola for another station, they always wanted to leave something behind to be remembered, so when they did come back, they'd have something that belonged to them, and they were really a part of Trader John's. Pictures, I've got thousands of pictures that we have rotated from year to year, and one of these days we'll donate it to the University of West Florida for a real museum. The flight helmets that you see up on the wall over there are all war aces from Korea and from Vietnam. And they felt it quite an honor to have it at Trader John's. And every time we had an ace, it was sort of a tradition to leave their flight helmet at Trader John's. We've got 75 war aces up on a wall hanging at Trader John's. I had no idea I'd ever be a bar owner. That's for 50 years now. Pretty good.
Is it a good life?
It's beautiful. Gets better all the time because you get to know so many more people.
Many of the artifacts that are everywhere in the South Palafox Street Tavern have been traded for a drink or a night on Trader John. But most are gifts to a man who has made his bar home to the Navy in Pensacola.
He's a tradition, you know, in naval aviation, and we don't really feel like we're the special ones when we come in here. We feel like he's the special one. And we come in here, you know, to relax and then enjoy a few minutes off. But we come in here to be with Trader.
Sarge, it's good to have you gentlemen with us. Without you men, we couldn't run the whole system. That's the truth.
Trader makes us part of his family down here, and that's good. He doesn't treat us like a second-class citizen. He treats us as a first-class citizen, and that's good.
They respect me as well as I respect them. It's vice versa. I've always accommodated the local people. That I never got away from the local people. Instead of making it a tourist attraction, I made it a local attraction, which I felt they deserve most of the benefits because I got a lot of the benefits from them.
Pensacola's ambassador of high times, as he's called, is remembered for far more than his generosity and his Mona Lisa smile.
For the past 40 years, I've had mismatched socks. And if anyone catches Trader with matching socks, they'll receive $100,000. So far, I haven't paid off yet.
Now, how did that get started?
Well, one day I went to a party, and everybody had to look different. I looked as a red light and a green light. I had half of my clothes was red and half of my clothes was green. My socks was red, my socks was green, one of each. And I had one green shoe and one red shoe. I painted them, and since then I've been wearing mismatched socks.
We talked with Captain Tony down in Key West, and he claims to have the oldest bar in Florida.
Well, he has one of the oldest, but not the oldest. I was in business 20 years before Tony opened up his bar. I had a bar in Key West, just several blocks away from Tony, and it was quite a historical place, too. It was great. This is where they got their training. I think it's beautiful.
Oh, they're great.
Every day I look forward to being here. People that come to visit us from time to time, we've been here over a period of 40 years, and each day people come to visit Trader John's that haven't been here for 10, 20, 30, 40 years. And if I'm not here, it would spoil their whole image of traders. So I just love to be around the people.
Right now I want to work on picking which of the pencil sharpeners we should develop into magnets, for the history places in particular. We're doing really well on the other magnets, the space shuttles and the F-16 and the F-14. But now I think for the history places especially, we want to have some more women-oriented magnets.
Ocala's Judith Kaplan is a little lady and a big businesswoman. She's president of an unusual company she started in the basement of her home. Now, Action Packets Incorporated is a nearly $2 million a year marketing operation that supplies museums, zoos, and tourist shops. With the souvenir toys, T-shirts, and assorted whirly gigs and doodads they sell to visitors.
When you go through this warehouse, you'll see it's kind of cluttered now because we're about to expand. But our house in New York City, the stamp packets and the first day covers had overtaken the entire house, basement, garage, all the way up to the kitchen and bedroom and so on. And we were looking for, or thinking about moving, and we got a good offer for our house and sold it. And thought about either moving to Florida or Texas, and frankly we knew more about Florida, and we had a very good friend who was a vice president of AMREP, which runs this development, Silver Spring Shores, and he invited us down, showed us the area and living here, and the Industrial Development Council of Ocala was very, very helpful, very friendly, and although we only had 2 employees, they made us feel very, very welcome and made it sound real good, and that's how come we moved to Florida and to Ocala. We started Action Packets because my other company, Typex, is slow in the summertime. The other company, Typex, sells first day covers to stamp collectors. A first day cover is an envelope on which a brand new stamp that has been postmarked on the very first day of that stamp's being issued. It's postmarked by the United States Postal Service. And collectors collect that envelope with what's called cachets. These are illustrations that are enhancing and explaining why that stamp was issued. Basically, it's an artistic interpretation of that stamp.
Both companies are housed in their new Ocala warehouse, and Judith runs the gift shop supply business, while the stamp collectibles are handled by her husband, Warren.
We have a good relationship in that. I take care of Typex, that's mine, and she takes care of Action Packets. But if the company's successful, she gets all the credit. If it's not successful, she gets all the credit for that also. Yeah, she's in every sense the word boss in that. And she's developed as a superior executive over the years.
He's very, very supportive. Everything we've done, we've bounced ideas off of each other. Right now he's running the stamp company and doing certain things in Action Packets, buying, public relations, help with the sales force, and we're a team, and always have been.
We just never get discouraged. I can't think of a single thing that Judy ever gets discouraged at. I mean, Judy, her bowling average, for example, is 80. I mean, she has a huge handicap. It is embarrassing for me when she gets up there and throws the ball. It's maybe embarrassing for her, but the most remarkable thing is she shows up every week, and every week I wish she wouldn't, but but she shows up, and she'll do the same thing. She was physically not strong in any particular way. Anyway, she started on Nautilus, and she's looking better than ever. Her legs are dynamite. You see, and she's feeling good about herself. She has tremendous mental capacity too. I get along real well with her.
In addition to being an ardent businesswoman, Judith is also very active in the women's movement, having been the founder of the Ocala Marion County chapter of the National Organization for Women.
Actually, I was very, very intellectually into feminism before there was a movement. And in about 1964, I met with a high school friend of mine, and we both mapped out a book which was on being a woman in America in 1964, and I was in Manhattan, and I purchased a book, The Feminine Mystique by Betty Friedan, and I called my friend up and said, well, it's been written already. And at the end of the book, she did mention that that now the National Organization for Women had been formed, and I contacted them, and so I'm a very early member of the first chapter, the founding chapter of NOW in New York City. And I collected, and had been collecting, first day covers of women's history for quite some time. And I wanted to be able to do fundraising for the New York chapter of NOW, to raise the consciousness of stamp collectors about the role of women in the United States history, to raise the consciousness of the United States Post Office to issue more stamps on women, because there were very few. and to do something on this continuity basis. And that's how I started the single largest fundraiser for the New York chapter of NOW and produced about 170 different first aid covers of women. The role of consciousness raising has been to tell women that if they have some paths in their way, some of it is not theirs, some of it is theirs. But if they're constantly looking at the negative, then and don't see how to get around it, then it's detrimental to their personal growth. And life is all about personal growth.
Building airplanes came almost naturally, full-size ones. Just give you a little start when you first time you fly one, especially your own design, to see how it flies. It becomes a moment of truth when you take the air with it. You get to examining all your inner self of how well I did this. There's nobody else to prove it to except you and God, I guess.
Ed Hoffman, an interior designer from Tarpon Springs, has a love for aviation that goes somewhat deeper than most. For more than 20 years now, Ed has been designing, building, and flying his own, often unusual aircraft.
When I got out of the Army, I went into the design field, took up interior design instead of architecture. Still at it. And what had been my livelihood became my hobby. So I bought a couple of old airplanes and flew them around a while. And then when the home-built movement got started in the 50s, well, I joined it in the early days and built my first airplane in 1959. And I've built 5 since then.
What kind of planes do you build?
I've been building mostly flying boats because I like flying boats. We're surrounded by water, as you can see out here, and it's a natural airport. As I said to start with, I grew up around flying boats. The first airplanes I saw were flying boats, and it is very delightful to fly off the water. You feel like you fly over your runway all the time. If the engine quits, you're safe. You land right straight ahead if you're into the wind. You have to watch out for heavy seas and things like that, but it's an awful big airport. My first home built was influenced, I guess, by the Spitfire. We had one squadron of Spitfires on the base I was at during the war, and when I first saw my Spitfire, when I first arrived in England in '43, I went down to the line and saw my first Spitfire, and it was like seeing Betty Grable in the nude. I was just completely fascinated. And I remember I was walking around. It was a very beautiful airplane. And I don't know if I consciously, but I'm sure unconsciously I copied the Spitfire. And it does look a little bit like a Spitfire. Elliptical wing. It's a rather pretty airplane in flight. My second machine was a flying boat. Called it Little Orphan Annie. The first one I named Sweet Patootie. Then I built another midget called the Girlfriend, which made interesting conversation at parties when I talked about my girlfriend and my wife.
As a pilot for the Florida Aviation Historical Society, Ed lent his talents and abilities to a recent reenactment of the world's first commercial air flight, which took place across Tampa Bay on January 1st, 1914.
What it really means to me is that Tony Janis, who flew the Benoit on the first flight, I had never met him. He died before I was born, but he was the hero of my heroes, and I guess that's why he became very real to me. And he was, as I said, he was somebody lost in history. So all of a sudden there's this been reawakening, and as I said, I was playing the part of Tony Janis when I flew across the bay with the Benoit this last January. But it was an important plane in history and important people in history that started this world's airline in, business. But anyway, I think we thought it was an important part of history, and we felt it should be reenacted. And by flying it, we, since it was almost in my realm to do this sort of thing. It was a great thrill to roll it out and fly it for the first time. And flew it down to St. Petersburg and then across to Tampa on January 1st. It was a very iffy sort of thing because the airplane didn't fly that well. We had a lot of bad weather from October through November. There wasn't much chance to fly it. The airplane has a total time of 2 hours and 27 minutes, which I guess makes me the most experienced Benoit pilot in Pinellas County, at least. Well, I've flown since, I've been, as I said, I've been interested and still interested in airplanes, and probably will till the day I die. But, I believe I soloed in 1938, and flew before the war, during the war, after the war, still flying, still have a current pilot's license, and still enjoy it very much. Still a thrill to come off the ground.
That's this week's Southern Circuit. Thank you for being with us. Join us next week when we travel to Hardy County to meet a sculptor whose castle is his home. We'll also make stops in St. Augustine, Gainesville, and Miami. We hope to see you then. Have a good week.